But first, Karl Rove, good morning and welcome.
Morning, David.
You were here on this program the day after the president was inaugurated back in 2001. You were headed to the National Cathedral for a prayer service. Tim Russert asked you about that.
What are you going to pray for?
Wisdom and patience, humility. That's important, I think, for people who come here to realize that we are here for only a time, and we have an obligation of service, and we need to keep things in perspective.
We're going to save this tape, Karl Rove, 3 good virtues.
We did save that tape, and as you're leaving the White House now, how do you think you measured up against those virtues?
Not enough wisdom and clearly not enough patience.
Humility?
I'll let others decide on that. I'm humble because I know what I saw. I was there. I saw the incredible strength of the man that we serve. I saw the strength of our country, and in some very trying and difficult times, I saw colleagues who made huge sacrifices to serve and whose talents are, put you in awe. So I was humbled by that experience, you bet.
Your critics, would they think you were humble and patient?
Well, my critics think all kinds of bad things about me. I don't really care.
Let's talk about the state of the Republican Party. You've been called the architect of the second term by the president. Many people feel you're the...
No, I was called the architect of the re-election strategy for the re-election. Let's keep it in perspective.
But you've had a big role in shaping the Republican Party during the Bush years. And let's look at the plight of the GOP as it now stands. I put a chart up on the screen. Back in 2000, 30 governors, now 22 governors. House members, 223, now 202. Senators down 55 to 49. Also a chart about public feelings about the Republican Party. Those who identify themselves as Republican back in 2001 at 41%, now 35. Positive feelings, 57 in 2001, now 28. Negative feelings, 22% back in 2001, now 49%. What's happened?
Let's step back and take an even broader frame. In 2000, this president won an election that he shouldn't have won. Every one of the academic prognosticators that got together at a conference in September of 2000 said Bush is going to lose the presidential election. We're at a time of apparent peace and prosperity. In fact, the best number I think the president got was 46% out of 46 to 54 in a survey or in a forecast done by Jim Campbell of SUNY Buffalo. Every one of them said we're going to lose, and we won. 2002, this president led his party to victory in the off-year congressional elections. Only the second president, the other was FDR in 1934, who was able to help his party gain seats in the House and Senate in the first off-year election. 2004, he ran for re-election. Unpopular war, Democratic Party united. The Republicans outspent by $124 million because of the Democratic 527s. Not only did the president become the first candidate since 1988 to get a majority of the vote, win 81% of the counties in America, but he also did something that's only been done one time before in American politics, and that is he helped his party gain seats in both the House and the Senate at the same time he won re-election.
Nevertheless,
let me finish. And in 2006, sure, we lost. But if you look at history, the second midterm elections, the White House party has lost an average of 30 seats in the House, 28 seats in the House, we lost 30, and 5 seats in the Senate, and we lost 6. And it was a very close election. 85,000 votes out of 82 million cast determined control of the U.S. House of Representatives. And control of the U.S. Senate was determined by 3,562 votes out of 60 million cast.
All right, but if we're comparing the state of the Republican Party today versus when this president came into office, it's also has to do with the issues and whether there's a party advantage for Republicans or Democrats on the issues. Look at this from the NBC News Wall Street Journal poll. Issue after issue, advantage goes to Democrats. Global warming, health care, gas prices, reducing the deficit, a conservative principle. Education, where you had made strides with no child left behind. And it goes on from there. Controlling government spending. Iraq, the Democrats with a 15-point advantage. Immigration, ethics, and government. Let me just continue.
No, David, I accept all this, but here's the fact. You go back and take a look at the polls in the summer of 1999, and you'll see a similar advantage for the Democrats. At the end of the contest, let's see how it all plays out. Is the Republican Party a little bit behind the curve? You bet. Do we need to take a clear and candid look at this and realize the American people want to know?
But why is it behind the curve? What's happened?
Look, I'll tell you what's behind. Why? Because we're in an unpopular war. And because we got defeated in the last elections. You know what the #1 issue was in the last election for people who voted Democrat in 06 and voted Republican in 04? It was corruption. They looked at what we did in Congress. They looked at all the scandals. They looked at Duke Cunningham. They looked at Abramoff. And they said, we're sick of it. The #2 issue was spending. particularly epitomized in earmarks, where they said, look, that's foolish. We don't want you to be spending our money that way.
On national security, a signature issue for this president, you said this past week that Democrats have a problem on that issue. Back in 2002, you said this is an issue that Republicans can take to the American people because they trust Republicans to do a better job protecting Americans. And yet today, which party would do a better job, according to our recent polling? It's actually a tie.
Yeah, look, first of all, we could go through polls all day long, and you quote polls, I'll quote polls, but here's the fundamental line. At the end of the day, a contest is decided by the candidates, talking about the issues, and appealing to the American people on the basis of an optimistic, forward-looking agenda. And I am very confident that we've got good candidates who, at the end of the day, will carry, one of them will carry the day in the primary and will stand an excellent chance of carrying the day in the general election, despite the fact it's very tough for a party to win the White House a third time. But I'm confident we've got an excellent shot to do so because of the quality of our candidates and the nature of the issue.
You talk about the candidates. Here is Mitt Romney winning the straw poll in Iowa, just as George W. Bush did back in 1999. He wasn't talking about the Bush legacy at all. Watch.
If there's ever been a time that we needed to see change in Washington, it's now.
Good for him. Every presidential...
He's talking about change after the Bush years.
Look, every presidential election is about change. Do you know who said something very similar to that in 1988? The vice president to Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush. Mitt Romney and Rudy Giuliani and Fred Thompson and all the, you know, all of our major candidates get it, that the election has got to be about the future. Democrats want to make it about the past. The Republicans want to make it about the future, and he was doing exactly the right thing.
How difficult will it be, in your judgment, for a Republican to win next year?
It's going to be a tough, contentious election year. It's going to be tough for a Democrat or a Republican to win. One of them will win, but only after a very tough, long contest.
But why? You said the Republicans are now behind the curve. Will that make it harder
just
for Republicans?
Just historically, look, it was different.
Is that simply a matter of being the country being at war?
No, no. We have a contentious war. And it's just, look, it's just difficult. That's what American history is about. It was, you know, Andrew Jackson served 2 terms. His vice president won. But that's a rare incident in American politics. It's just tough. Ronald Reagan ran twice and won. His vice president won. But it's just naturally tough. There is something about change. And if you have a candidate, like in 2000, who rested on his laurels and talked about the past rather than articulating a vision for the future, you become vulnerable. And we seized that vulnerability in 2000 and won an election we should not have won.
Do you feel responsible for the fortunes of the Republican Party today?
Look, I'm an avid Republican. I want my party to win. I've spent my adult life fighting for the Republican Party because I believe in its fundamental principles, and I believe it represents a optimistic and a hopeful way for America. So do I want my party to win? You betcha.
But do you feel responsible for its current state?
Look, every person who identifies with the Republican Party ought to feel some responsibility.
You do more than just identify with the Republican Party. You've been a key figure in shaping the party's agenda.
Our party has a positive and optimistic. Think about what we've been able to achieve. Our party, when this president came in, we faced a recession. We had corporate scandals. We had an attack on our homeland on 9/11 that devastated our economy. 1 million people lost their jobs in the aftermath of 9/11. This president and Republicans in Congress cut taxes and have given us 4 years of very strong economic growth. Our economy is dynamic and powerful, providing jobs and increases in real income for people. This president, when he came into office, came in a time of apparent peace. But on 9/11, we realized we were at war, and this president has put us on a war footing in a dangerous new kind of conflict that will shape this new young century. You look at education reform, you look at energy, you look at higher education, you look at welfare, you look at the compassion agenda, you look at faith-based, you look at AIDS in Africa, you look at trade. On a whole range of issues, this president has been able to offer a bold and optimistic agenda and get it done. He's also had the courage, because he understands the responsibility of a president, to take on big challenges where it isn't so easy to win. Immigration, Social Security reform. American people don't want a president to be sitting there wetting their fingers, sticking in the air and saying, you know what, I'm only going to go for issues in which it's an 80-20 winner or a 90-10 sure thing. They want presidents to take on big challenges. And the challenge of entitlements and resolving this thorny situation of immigration is vital for the future of the country.